A single mother texted the wrong number asking for $40 to buy baby formula. That number belonged to Keanu Reeves. He sent her $7,500 and a job at his charity foundation. But when she started working there, she discovered something terrifying. The man running the finances was stealing millions from children with cancer. When he found out she knew, he threatened to take away her son. She had two choices: stay silent and keep her life, or fight back and risk losing everything. What would you do? It was past midnight, the kind of cold, hollow hour when even the city outside seemed to hold its breath. Lila sat on the floor of her tiny kitchen in a rundown apartment on the outskirts of Los Angeles, her back pressed against the cabinet, her knees pulled up to her chest. A thin blanket was wrapped around her shoulders, doing little to keep out the chill that had settled into the walls. The lights were off, not because she wanted the darkness, but because the power company did not offer sympathy extensions. She had begged. She had explained, and still, the electricity had been cut 3 days ago. From the bedroom, 14-month-old Theo cried. His voice was hoarse now, tired from hours of fussing. Lila had already given him his bottle, but there was almost nothing left in it. Just water with a few drops of the last formula she had been rationing for days. She glanced at the empty canister on the counter. The sight of it made her stomach turn. Lila was 28 years old. She had a degree in financial accounting. She had worked for 4 years at a research company called Meridian Research, climbing her way up from intern to junior auditor. She had been good at her job. She had been proud of it. And then she got pregnant. The company called it a restructuring. They said her position was being eliminated. But Lila knew the truth. She had seen it in the way her supervisor looked at her growing belly, in the way meetings were scheduled without her, in the polite but cold smiles that replaced the friendly ones. "We need people who can commit long-term," they had said. Someone without so many personal complications. Theo's father had not even waited for the baby to be born. The moment Lila told him she was pregnant, he vanished. No explanation, no forwarding address, just silence. Since then, Lila had applied to dozens of jobs. Most never called back. The few that did would ask about her situation, about childcare, about her availability. And when she mentioned she was a single mother, the conversations always ended the same way. Her car had been repossessed 4 months ago. The daycare she could barely afford had shut down. The neighbors whispered behind her back whenever she walked past with Theo in her arms. She had heard them once, standing in the hallway. No husband, no job. Why would anyone have a baby in that situation? Lila had pretended not to hear. She had learned to pretend a lot of things. Now, sitting on the cold kitchen floor in the dark, she had exactly $11 in her bank account and a baby who did not understand why his stomach hurt. She picked up her phone with trembling hands. The screen lit up, casting a pale glow across her face. She scrolled to her brother's contact. Marcus had helped before, not happily, and not without making her feel small, but he had helped. She hated asking. She hated the way his voice would get tight, the way he would sigh before saying yes, the way he would remind her that he had his own bills to pay. But tonight was not about pride. Tonight was about a 14-month-old boy who needed to eat. Lila typed slowly, her thumb trembling over each letter. "Marcus, sorry to bother you again. I need $40 for formula. Theo is almost out. I get paid Friday. I will pay you back, please." She stared at the message for a long moment. Her vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. Then she hit send. She did not double check the number. She did not even look at the name at the top of the screen. She just set the phone down, dropped her forehead to her knees, and waited. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Her phone buzzed. Lila grabbed it, heart pounding, expecting her brother's reluctant agreement or maybe another lecture about responsibility. Instead, she saw a message from a number she did not recognize. "I think you sent this to the wrong person." Lila blinked. She looked at the contact name. It was not Marcus. The last digit was different. She had typed it wrong. Her stomach dropped. She had just begged a complete stranger for money. A complete stranger now knew she could not afford to feed her own child. Shame flooded through her, hot and suffocating. She typed quickly, her fingers clumsy. I am so sorry. Please ignore that. Wrong number. She locked the screen and tossed the phone aside. Another failure. Another humiliation to add to the pile. Theo's crying had quieted to a whimper. Lila pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders and closed her eyes, wishing she could disappear. 3 blocks away, in a modest house that looked nothing like what people expected from a Hollywood star, Keanu Reeves stared at the message on his phone. This was his private number. He never gave it out to anyone except family and a handful of close friends. No press, no assistants, no fans. The list of people who had this number had gotten shorter every year. He read the message again. Marcus, sorry to bother you again. I need $40 for formula. Theo is almost out. I get paid Friday. I will pay you back. Please. It was not spam. It was not a scam. There were no links, no requests for bank information, no suspicious attachments. It was just raw, real, desperate. Keanu had seen desperation before. He had felt it. There had been times in his life when he had not known where his next meal would come from, when he had slept on friends' couches, when he had wondered if he would ever make it. He knew what it felt like to be alone in the dark, praying for something to change. On any other night, he might have ignored a message like this. He might have assumed it was a mistake and moved on with his evening. But something about the words on the screen made him pause. Theo is almost out. I will pay you back. This was not just a request. This was a mother negotiating with her own dignity. This was someone who had swallowed every ounce of pride just to type those words. Keanu typed a response before he could talk himself out of it. I think you sent this to the wrong person. He watched the screen. A moment later, the reply came. I am so sorry. Please ignore that. Wrong number? He should have left it there. That was the sensible thing to do, the safe thing. Instead, he typed again. Is your baby going to be okay? Lila stared at the message, her heart hammering against her ribs. What kind of stranger followed up like that? Her first instinct was to block the number. People did not just ask about other people's children out of kindness. There was always an angle, always a catch. But something about the question, about how simply it was asked, made her stop. She typed back, her fingers hesitant. We will manage. Sorry again. The reply came quickly. I can help. No strings. Lila let out a short, bitter laugh. She had heard that before. From the landlord who offered to reduce her rent if she was nice to him. From men who saw a struggling single mother and thought opportunity. Thanks, but I do not take money from strangers, she typed. Smart policy. I am Keanu. Now I am not a stranger. Lila frowned at the screen. Keanu. The name tugged at something in her memory, but she was too exhausted to think about why. She did not reply. She turned her phone face down and went to check on Theo. He had finally fallen asleep, his small chest rising and falling in the dim light from the window. His cheeks were still wet with tears. Lila stood in the doorway for a long time, watching him breathe. Then she did something she never thought she would do. She went back to her phone, opened the message thread, and sent the stranger her Venmo. 3 seconds later, her phone buzzed. Lila opened the notification, expecting maybe $40, maybe $50, if the stranger was feeling generous. The screen showed a transfer of $7,500 from Keanu Reeves. Lila sat frozen. She blinked. She opened the app and checked again. $7,500. Real. In her account. Her hands began to shake. She typed with trembling fingers. This is too much. I only needed 40. The reply came almost instantly. It is already yours. No catch. One less thing to worry about. Lila did not cry when she lost her job. She did not cry when they took her car. She did not cry when Theo's father walked away without looking back. But this broke something open inside her. She pressed her hand over her mouth to keep from making a sound. The tears came anyway, streaming down her face, dripping onto the phone screen. "Thank you," she typed. "I do not even know what to say. You do not have to say anything. Just take care of Theo." Lila read the message 3 times. Her breath caught in her throat. She had not told him her son's name in their conversation. She had only mentioned it in the original message, the one meant for Marcus. He had remembered. A stranger had paid attention to a detail she had almost forgotten herself. Lila did not sleep that night. Even after Theo finally drifted off, his belly full from a proper bottle she had managed to buy at the 24-hour pharmacy down the street, she lay awake staring at the ceiling. The money was real. She had checked a dozen times. It was still there, sitting in her account like a dream she was afraid to wake from. Part of her wanted to believe this was genuine, that there were still good people in the world who helped others without expecting anything in return. But another part of her, the part that had been disappointed too many times, kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. The next morning, there was a knock at the door. Lila's heart jumped. No one ever knocked. Not here. The landlord sent texts. The neighbors barely acknowledged her existence. She pulled on a hoodie and walked quietly to the door, careful not to wake Theo. She peered through the peephole. A delivery driver stood outside, holding a clipboard. Behind him, she could see a stack of large boxes on a dolly. She opened the door slowly. "Delivery for Lila Brennan." She nodded, too surprised to speak. "Sign here, please." She signed. The driver brought in the boxes, one by one, and stacked them in her living room. 5 of them, all sealed, all heavy. When he left, Lila stood staring at the pile, her hands trembling. She opened the first box carefully, as if it might disappear if she moved too fast. Inside was formula. Not the cheap kind she had been buying, but the premium brand she had always wished she could afford. Enough to last for months. The second box held diapers, wipes, and baby lotion. The third had bottles, pacifiers, and organic baby food pouches. The fourth was filled with clothes, soft cotton onesies and warm pajamas in Theo's size. The fifth box was smaller. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was a note. Lila unfolded it with shaking hands. The handwriting was simple and clear. "Theo deserves better than just getting by. Keanu." She sat down on the floor, surrounded by boxes, and let the tears come. Not because she was sad, not because she was scared. Because for the first time in longer than she could remember, someone had seen her. Not as a burden. Not as a charity case. Not as a problem to be solved or avoided. Just as a mother trying to keep her child safe. That afternoon, after Theo had been fed and changed and dressed in his new pajamas, Lila finally allowed herself to do what she had been too exhausted to do the night before. She sat on the couch, picked up her phone, and typed the name into a search bar. Keanu Reeves. The results loaded faster than she was ready for. Keanu Reeves, actor. One of the most famous faces in Hollywood. But that was not what made Lila stop scrolling. It was the other stories, the ones about who he was when the cameras were not rolling. He rode the subway and gave up his seat to strangers. He took pay cuts so that film crews could have better budgets. He donated quietly to causes he believed in without seeking attention for it. And he had known loss. Deep, private grief that he carried without complaint. The kind of pain that either hardens a person or softens them. Looking at the photos, Lila could tell which way it had gone for him. He did not look like a movie star in most of them. Just a man in simple clothes, often alone, with tired eyes and a gentle expression. She thought about his message. Just take care of Theo. It did not sound like something a celebrity would say to impress someone. It sounded like something a person said when they understood what it meant to struggle. Lila stared at the message thread for a long time, trying to figure out what to say. Finally, she typed, "I got the boxes. I do not know how to thank you. This is more than anyone has ever done for me." The reply came a few minutes later. You do not need to thank me. I just wanted to help. Lila hesitated, then typed again. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why do you care? You could have ignored my message. You could have sent $40 and forgotten about me. Why did you do all this? There was a long pause. Lila watched the screen, wondering if she had pushed too far. Then the message appeared. Because once, someone helped me when they did not have to. I have never forgotten that. And because no child should ever go hungry if I can do something about it. Lila read the words slowly. They were not meant to impress her. They were just true. She did not know how to respond. So she simply wrote, "Thank you for everything. You are welcome." A moment passed. Then another message appeared. Can I ask you something now? Lila felt her stomach tighten. Here it was. The catch. The request. Okay, she typed. Do you work? The question hit harder than she expected. She almost did not answer. I did. Until Theo came. And until the company I worked for let me go. And until the only daycare I could afford shut down. So no, not right now. What was your field? Financial accounting. Mostly auditing. I interned at Meridian Research before things got complicated. You worked in finance. Yes. But I also know how to scrub toilets, make coffee, and calculate taxes I cannot afford to pay. She sent the message before she could second guess herself. It was more honest than she had intended to be. His reply came a moment later. I might know of something. If you are interested. Lila stared at the screen. Her heart began to beat faster. What do you mean? I run a foundation called Starlight Foundation. We help children with cancer and families going through difficult times. We have been looking for someone with a background in finance. Someone who notices details that others miss. Lila's breath caught. Are you offering me a job? I am offering you a chance to earn one. Come by tomorrow at 11. Ask for Margot Sterling. No pressure. Just a conversation. Lila looked at Theo, who was playing with a stuffed fox on the floor, completely unaware of how much his world had just shifted. She thought about all the doors that had been closed in her face. All the interviews that had gone nowhere. All the time she had been told she was not the right fit. And now a door was opening. Not because she had begged for it. Not because she had played some game. Just because a stranger had chosen not to look away. She typed her response slowly. I will be there. Lila had not slept much the night before. She had spent hours staring at her ceiling, running through every possible scenario in her head. What if this was all a mistake? What if she showed up and they laughed at her? What if she was not good enough anymore? But when the morning light crept through the thin curtains of her apartment, she pushed those thoughts aside. She had promised she would be there, and if there was one thing Lila Brennan did not do, it was break a promise. She woke early, fed Theo, and dressed him in the nicest outfit from the boxes Keanu had sent. Then she turned to her own closet. The options were limited. Most of her professional clothes had been donated during last winter's rent crisis. What remained was a pair of black slacks and a cream-colored blouse she had not worn since before Theo was born. She tried them on, pulled her hair back into a neat ponytail, and looked at herself in the cracked mirror above the bathroom sink. She did not look like the woman she used to be, but she looked like someone trying, and maybe that was enough. The Starlight Foundation was located in a modest office building in downtown Los Angeles. It was not the gleaming tower Lila had expected. No marble lobby, no intimidating security desk. Just a simple glass entrance with the foundation's name etched in gold letters above the door. Starlight Foundation had been operating for 15 years. What started as a small charity had grown into one of the largest non-profit organizations on the West Coast, with an annual budget of nearly $50 million and a staff of about 50 people. They help children battling cancer, families drowning in medical debt, and communities that had nowhere else to turn. Lila stood outside for a moment. Theo strapped to her chest in a soft gray carrier. She took a deep breath and stepped through the revolving door. The lobby was warm and welcoming. Photographs lined the walls, images of children smiling despite hospital beds, families embracing after difficult treatments, volunteers handing out supplies. This was not a corporation. This was something built from compassion. Lila approached the front desk, her heart beating faster with each step. Before she could speak, a security guard stepped forward, blocking her path. He was a large man with a shaved head and a uniform that seemed too tight across his shoulders. His eyes moved over her, taking in her worn shoes, her second-hand blouse, the baby carrier on her chest. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, his tone polite but dismissive. "Do you have an appointment? This is not a—" He paused, searching for the right words. "This is not a welfare registration center." Lila felt heat rise to her cheeks. She had heard that tone before, seen that look before. The assumption that because she did not look wealthy, she must be lost, or confused, or looking for a handout. She straightened her back and met his gaze. "I have an appointment with Margot Sterling," she said, keeping her voice steady. "My name is Lila Brennan." The guard's expression flickered with doubt. He reached for the phone on the desk, still watching her as if she might steal something while he was not looking. "Wait here," he said. Lila waited. She kept her chin up and her hands steady, even though inside, she wanted to turn around and walk out. She was used to being dismissed, but she had come too far to let one man's prejudice send her home. A few minutes later, the elevator doors opened. A woman stepped out. She was in her mid-40s, with sleek black hair cut to her shoulders and a tablet tucked under her arm. Her smile was warm but professional, the kind that made you feel welcome without being overly familiar. "Lila," she said, extending her hand. "I am Margot Sterling. I apologize for any inconvenience. Please, come with me." Lila shook her hand, noting the firm grip, the genuine warmth in her eyes. Behind her, the security guard had taken a step back, his face slightly red. Margot did not acknowledge him. She simply gestured toward the elevator and waited for Lila to follow. The ride up was quiet. Margot made small talk about the weather, about how the foundation had recently expanded its programs, about how lovely Theo looked in his blue outfit. Lila answered politely, but her mind was elsewhere. She was thinking about the guard, about the way he had looked at her, about how many times in her life she had been judged before she even had a chance to speak. The elevator stopped on the 5th floor. The doors opened to reveal a hallway lined with glass, walled offices, and soft, natural light. "Before we go to the conference room," Margot said, "he asked me to show you something first." She led Lila down the hallway to a door at the end. It was painted a soft yellow, different from the others. Margot unlocked it and stepped aside. Lila walked in and stopped. It was not an office. It was a nursery. A crib sat in one corner, made up with soft blankets and a mobile of silver stars hanging above it. There was a changing table against the wall, stocked with diapers and wipes. A plush rug covered the floor, and a basket of toys sat nearby. Blackout curtains framed the window, ready to be drawn for nap time. Lila's hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes burned. "He thought this might help you feel more comfortable," Margot said quietly, "so you would not have to worry about Theo while you work." Lila turned to look at her. "Why would he do this?" Margot's expression softened. "Because he knows what it feels like to walk into life alone." Lila did not know how to respond. She stood in the middle of the room, surrounded by thoughtfulness she had not asked for and did not know how to repay. 20 minutes later, Lila sat in a small conference room with a cup of coffee in front of her. Theo was asleep in his carrier beside her, his tiny hand curled around the ear of a stuffed rabbit someone had placed in the nursery. The door opened quietly. Lila looked up. Keanu Reeves walked in. Seeing him in person was different than she had expected. On screen, he was larger than life. In photographs, he looked like a man who belonged on magazine covers and red carpets. But here, standing in a simple conference room in a charity office, he looked almost ordinary. Tall, yes, composed, certainly, but also tired. Human, real. He wore a black button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows and dark slacks. No tie, no expensive watch. Just a man who looked like he had been working long hours and sleeping too few. Lila, he said, and the way he spoke her name made it sound like the most natural thing in the world. Thank you for coming. She stood awkwardly, unsure what to do with her hands. I was not sure if I should. You came anyway? He said. That is what matters. He sat down across from her, resting his forearms on the table. His eyes were kind but serious. Before we talk about anything else, he said, I want to be clear about something. You owe me nothing. This is not a test. I am not here to rescue you. I do not believe in charity as a concept, but I do believe in investing in people. Lila studied his face. There was no pretense there, no hidden agenda that she could detect. Why me? She asked. Keanu was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke. Because I saw someone who did not ask for a shortcut. Someone who did not expect anything. Someone who was willing to go without before letting their child suffer. He paused. And someone like that, I would trust with anything. Lila felt her throat tighten. She did not know what to say. Keanu slid a folder across the table. Temporary position, he said. 6 months. Financial audit support. Flexible hours. You can work on site or remotely. The pay is more than fair, and if it is not the right fit, you walk away. No questions asked. Lila opened the folder. Her eyes moved to the salary line. It was more than 3 times what she had made at Meridian Research. She looked up at him. This is real. It is. She glanced at Theo, still sleeping peacefully, then back at Keanu. And the nursery. A small smile crossed his face. Faint, tired, but genuine. Also real. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was not uncomfortable. It was understanding. Finally, Lila nodded once. I will take it. Lila's first official day at Starlight Foundation began before the sun was fully up. She arrived early, dressed in the only business casual outfit she had not donated during her worst months. Theo was strapped to her chest, still half asleep, his thumb in his mouth. No one stared. That surprised her. She had expected sideways glances or whispered comments. Instead, the woman at the reception desk greeted her with a warm, "Good morning." As if she had worked there for years. Margot met her at the elevator with coffee already in hand. Theo's space is ready, she said, not missing a beat as they walked down the hallway. Your office is just across from it. You will have full access to the internal systems. Let me know if you need anything. Lila blinked. That is it. Margot smiled. That is it. The office they gave her was modest but functional. A wide desk, dual monitors, an ergonomic chair that felt like a luxury after months of sitting on her kitchen floor. Through the glass partition behind her, she could see into the nursery. Theo was already settled on the soft rug, reaching for a set of colorful blocks. Lila sat down slowly and placed her hands on the keyboard. She had not worked in over a year. She had not touched an internal audit system since her final project at Meridian Research, the one that never got finished because the company folded without warning. But as she opened her inbox, reviewed the file directories, and pulled up the Foundation's financial records, something familiar stirred in her chest. Her brain clicked back into gear. She knew what to look for. Baseline deviations, inconsistencies between submitted and verified invoices, patterns of internal transfers that did not match project activity. It was like picking up an old instrument and remembering how to play. She worked quietly for over an hour, reviewing reports, cross-referencing vendor payments, building a mental map of how the Foundation's money moved. And then, at the end of her second week, she found it. It was not a smoking gun. It never was. But there was a pattern. The same vendor name appeared just often enough to be noticeable. The amounts varied, ranging from $800 to $2,200, always under the internal audit threshold. But they all shared one strange trait. They were tied to project codes that did not exist. Lila leaned closer to her screen, checking her work. The vendor did not match any real division within the foundation. And yet, the payments had been processed, approved, and quietly buried under dozens of legitimate transactions. She copied the vendor code into a private folder and began cross-referencing. The payments were not going to any standard operating account. They were being routed through a third-party holding company registered in Nevada. Lila recognized the structure immediately. It was a shell company, legal on paper, untraceable without higher-level access. The name of the company was Crescent Holdings LLC. Lila sat back in her chair, her stomach tightening. Someone inside Starlight Foundation was siphoning money, slowly, strategically, and they were very good at hiding it. This was not careless embezzlement. This was planned extraction. Over the next few days, Lila dug deeper. She documented 22 payments linked to Crescent Holdings. Each one routed through a different department budget. Each one signed off by a different low-level approver. But the access point, every single time, was the same device ID. Someone was using ghost credentials, either duplicating or hijacking existing user logins to authorize the transfers. The total amount moved over 18 months came to more than $2.3 million. For a foundation with an annual budget of $50 million, that was not pocket change. It was theft on a scale that could cripple programs, delay treatments, and leave families without the help they desperately needed. Money that should have gone to children with cancer, to families struggling with medical bills, to the very people Starlight Foundation was created to help. Lila felt sick. She remembered what Keanu had told her on her first day. If you find anything that does not look right, bring it directly to me. No one else. Not even Margot. At the time, she had thought it was a strange instruction. Now, it made sense. She copied the files onto an encrypted flash drive, slipped it into her bag, and sent Keanu a message. I need 5 minutes. It is important. His reply came within seconds. Come up. Keanu's office was on the top floor. The windows looked out over half the city, but the blinds were half drawn, casting the room in soft shadow. He looked up when she entered. His expression shifted the moment he saw her face. You found something? He said. It was not a question. Lila nodded and handed him the drive. It is not confirmed yet, but it is enough to raise serious questions. Keanu plugged the drive into his monitor and began scrolling through the files. She watched his expression change as he read. First subtle, then deeper, more focused. You pulled this from the second quarter reports, he asked. Yes, but it spans earlier quarters too. The vendor does not exist. The payments route through a shell account in Nevada, masked under smaller invoices. It is sophisticated, precise. Keanu leaned back in his chair and exhaled slowly. You are right. It is clean. Too clean. Which means whoever did this knows the system? Lila said. Knows it well? Keanu finished. Probably helped design the controls. Lila crossed her arms. You already suspected something. Keanu met her gaze. I have been watching the numbers drift since late last year, but I could not get anyone in the finance department to chase it. Too subtle, too easy to explain away. So why not bring in an outside auditing firm? He hesitated. Because I do not know who I can trust. Lila felt that settle in her chest like a weight. She understood that kind of isolation, the kind that came after losing too much and trusting too fast. It hollowed you out. Made you second-guess everything. Everyone. So what now? She asked. I want you to keep digging, Keanu said. But quietly. No names, no email trails, and if anyone asks, you are still reconciling back-end billing records. Lila tilted her head. You are asking me to investigate your own foundation. I am asking you to find the truth. She held his gaze. And if I find something ugly? Keanu did not blink. Then we deal with it. He reached into his coat and pulled out another folder. He slid it across the desk. Lila opened it. A face stared back at her. A man in his mid-40s, clean cut, wearing a sharp suit. His smile was polished but empty. Bradley Thornton, Keanu said. Chief Financial Officer. Lila stiffened. I have seen that name in the system. He was hired 3 years ago, after the previous CFO resigned unexpectedly. He pushed through changes to our internal systems, gave his own team exclusive oversight over certain divisions, and quietly removed several cross-check protocols. No one questioned it because he did it under the banner of streamlining compliance. Lila closed the folder. You think he is behind this? I know he is, Keanu said. But proving it, that is the hard part. You want me to find the crack? Exactly. Lila looked at the folder in her hands, then back at Keanu. If I do this, she said slowly, and he finds out I am looking, what happens to me? Keanu's jaw tightened. I will not let anything happen to you. Or to Theo. It was not a promise made lightly. She could see that in his eyes. Okay, she said. I will find it. That night, Lila lay awake in her small apartment, staring at the ceiling. Theo was curled beside her, his breathing slow and peaceful. She replayed the conversation in her head, over and over. She was not afraid of digging. She was not even afraid of what she might find. What worried her most was what she had already seen on Keanu's face. He already knew. He had known for a while. He just had not wanted to admit it. And now, she was standing in the middle of a battle she had not chosen. A battle between a man who built something to help others and someone who had decided to steal from the people who needed it most. Lila looked at Theo. His small hand rested on her arm, trusting, innocent. She thought about all the children whose families depended on Starlight Foundation. Children fighting cancer. Parents drowning in medical bills. People who had nowhere else to turn. If the money meant for them was being stolen, someone had to stop it. And maybe, just maybe, that someone was her. The days that followed were long and quiet. Lila worked through lunch most days, her eyes fixed on the screen, her fingers moving steadily across the keyboard. She had built a routine now. Arrive early. Check on Theo in the nursery. Sit at her desk. Dig. The more she looked, the more she found. Bradley Thornton had not just been sloppy. He had been meticulous. Every payment to Crescent Holdings had been routed through a different department, signed off by a different low-level employee. On the surface, nothing connected them. But Lila saw the thread, the device ID. Every single approval, regardless of which employee's login was used, came from the same device. Someone was hijacking credentials, using real accounts to authorize fake transactions. It was sophisticated, calculated, and it had been going on for at least 18 months. Lila documented everything, every timestamp, every transaction code, every discrepancy between the approved invoices and the actual project records. She saved the files in an encrypted folder on her personal drive, backed up on a flash drive she kept in her bag at all times. She was building a case, piece by piece, and Bradley Thornton had no idea. Or so she thought. It started small. A glance across the office that lasted a second too long. A question from a colleague about what projects she was working on. A request from IT to verify her system access, which had never happened before. Then, at the weekly staff meeting, it became impossible to ignore. Lila sat in the corner of the conference room, notebook open, pen in hand. She preferred to observe rather than speak. It was easier to notice things when people forgot you were watching. The meeting was routine. Budget updates. Program reports. A brief discussion about an upcoming fundraising gala. Then Derek Hansen stood up. He was a middle manager in his early 30s, with slicked back hair and a suit that looked more expensive than his position warranted. Lila had seen him around the office, always lingering near Bradley's door, always laughing a little too loudly at his jokes. Derek cleared his throat and smiled at the room. Before we wrap up, he said, I just want to take a moment to welcome our newest team member. Lila felt the eyes shift toward her. Miss Brennan, is it? Derek continued, his tone dripping with false warmth. How long have you been with us now? 2 weeks. 3? 3, Lila said calmly. Derek nodded slowly. Well, I hope you are settling in. It must be quite an adjustment, balancing spreadsheets and baby bottles. A few people chuckled. Most looked uncomfortable. But no one said anything. Lila kept her face neutral. She did not give him the satisfaction of a reaction. At the head of the table, Bradley Thornton sat with his hands folded. He did not laugh. He did not intervene. He simply watched Lila with eyes that were cold and assessing. The meeting ended a few minutes later. Lila gathered her things and walked toward the door. As she stepped into the hallway, she heard voices behind her. Low, but not low enough. Who even is she? Some charity case, apparently. Keanu found her somewhere. Probably his latest save, the World Project. Lila kept walking. She did not turn around. She did not respond. But every word landed like a small blade between her ribs. She had heard it all before. The assumptions, the judgment, the quiet cruelty of people who believed that poverty was a character flaw rather than a circumstance. But this time was different. This time, she was not just trying to survive. She was trying to expose the truth, and the people mocking her had no idea how much she already knew. 2 days later, Bradley made his move. Lila was at her desk, reviewing a batch of invoices from the previous quarter, when a shadow fell across her screen. She looked up. Bradley Thornton stood beside her cubicle, his hands in his pockets, a pleasant smile on his face. But his eyes told a different story. "Miss Brennan," he said, "the new hire. How are you finding things?" Lila kept her voice steady. "Fine, thank you. Good, good." He glanced at her monitor, then back at her. "I hear you have been working quite hard, digging into old files, cross-referencing records." "Just doing my job," Lila said. Bradley nodded slowly. "Of course. Diligence is admirable." He paused, letting the silence stretch. "If you ever need anything, my door is always open. I like to think of this place as a family." "I appreciate that," Lila said, her tone flat. Bradley held her gaze for a moment longer than necessary. Then he smiled again, turned and walked away. Lila waited until he was out of sight before exhaling. He knew. Maybe not everything, but enough to be suspicious. Enough to start watching her. That afternoon, she checked her system access logs. Someone had reviewed her activity history twice in the past week. The requests had come from an administrative account with no name attached. Lila copied the logs and added them to her encrypted folder. The walls were closing in. She could feel it. That evening, she met with Keanu in his office. "He knows I am looking," she said. "Or at least he suspects." Keanu leaned back in his chair, his expression grave. "I expected this would happen eventually. What do we do? Why accelerate the timeline?" He turned to his computer and pulled up a video call interface. "There is someone I want you to meet." A moment later, a face appeared on the screen. A woman in her early 50s, with short silver hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. She wore no makeup and her expression was direct, almost severe. "Miss Brennan," the woman said. "I am Delilah Cross, former FBI, 25 years in financial crimes. Now I work privately for people who need problems solved without the red tape." Lila nodded. "Keanu mentioned you. He speaks highly of you," Cross said. "I have reviewed the files you compiled. Impressive work. Most professional auditors would have missed the pattern entirely. I just followed the numbers." "No." Cross's voice was firm. "You saw what others chose to ignore. That is not the same thing." Lila felt a small swell of something she had not felt in a long time. "Pride." Cross continued. "Based on what you have found, I have enough to approach the FBI with a formal request for investigation. If they agree, we can get a warrant to monitor Bradley's financial activity in real time. And if they do not agree," Lila asked, "then we find another way." Cross's eyes were steady. "But I do not think that will be necessary. What you have uncovered is significant. $2.3 million stolen from a charity that helps dying children. That is the kind of case federal prosecutors love." Keanu spoke up. "What do you need from us?" "Patience," Cross said, "and bait. We need Bradley to panic, to make a mistake. If he thinks he is about to be exposed, he will try to move the money or cover his tracks. And when he does, we will have him." Lila understood. The trap was being set. Now they just had to wait. The next morning, Keanu called Bradley into a private meeting. Lila was not in the room, but she watched the security feed from her office, her heart pounding in her chest. Bradley walked in with the easy confidence of a man who believed he was untouchable. He sat down across from Keanu, crossed his legs, and smiled. "You wanted to see me? I have been reviewing some of the quarterly financials," Keanu said, his voice calm. "There are a few things I would like to discuss." Bradley tilted his head. "Of course. Anything specific?" "A vendor called Crescent Holdings. Are you familiar with it?" For a fraction of a second, something flickered in Bradley's eyes. Then it was gone. "Crescent Holdings," he repeated slowly. "Does not ring a bell. Facilities, security, both, apparently, and also research and legal." Keanu leaned forward slightly. "Interesting, for a company that no one seems to be able to contact directly." Bradley's smile thinned. "I will have my team look into it. Probably a clerical error." "I do not think it is an error," Keanu said. "I think it is a pattern. Ghost credentials, shell accounts, payments routed through departments that have no record of requesting them." The room went silent. Bradley's expression did not change, but his posture stiffened almost imperceptibly. "I know what you have been doing," Keanu continued. "I have the logs, the device IDs, the account structures. You have been siphoning money through fake vendors and distributing it through ghost pipelines. And you thought no one would notice." For a long moment, Bradley said nothing. Then, slowly, his smile returned. But it was different now. Colder, sharper. "You think you are clever," Bradley said. "An actor playing hero in real life. You think the world runs on ideals and good intentions." He stood up and buttoned his jacket. "Let me tell you something, Keanu. I have been doing this for a long time. Longer than you have been running this little charity project. And I know how the game works." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small flash drive. He set it on the table between them. "Emails," Bradley said. "Messages. Financial records that suggest you have been mismanaging funds, diverting money to cover personal expenses. None of it is true, of course. We both know that. But perception matters more than truth when you are on the chopping block." Keanu's jaw tightened. "Why are you showing me this?" "I am not showing you. I am warning you." Bradley's voice dropped. "You have until Friday to resign. Quietly. I have already spoken with 2 board members. They will support me. Walk away, and I will not touch your little accountant." He turned and walked toward the door. At the threshold, he paused and looked back. "Do not try to be a hero, Keanu. Heroes lose." Lila was still at her desk when Bradley appeared beside her. She had not heard him approach. One moment she was alone, the next he was there, pulling up a chair and sitting down as if they were old friends having a casual conversation. "Miss Brennan," he said softly, "we need to talk." Lila did not look up from her screen. "I am working. I know exactly what you are doing." His voice was low, just above a whisper. "You think you are clever. You think you are going to expose something. But let me be very clear with you." He leaned closer. Lila could smell his cologne, sharp and expensive. "People like you do not belong here," he said. "You are charity, a project, something for Keanu to feel good about. And when he gets bored, you will be thrown away like everything else." Lila finally looked at him. His eyes were cold, empty of anything resembling humanity. "Are you finished?" she asked. Bradley's smile did not waver. "Not quite. I want you to understand something. If you continue down this path, you will lose everything. Your job, your reputation, your son." Lila felt her blood turn to ice. "I know people," Bradley continued. "People who can make your life very difficult. People who can make sure you never work again. People who can make sure that little boy of yours ends up somewhere you cannot reach him." Lila's hands trembled, but she kept her voice steady. "I am not afraid of you." Bradley stood up slowly. "You should be." He walked away without another word. A few minutes later, Derek Hansen appeared. He leaned against the partition of her cubicle, arms crossed, a smug expression on his face. Friendly advice, Miss Brennan? He said. Know your place. You are not one of us. You are just a temporary guest. Lila looked at him. And what are you? His guard dog. Derek's face went pale, then red. Watch your mouth. Watch your loyalty. Lila said, turning back to her screen. You might be backing the wrong side. Derek opened his mouth to respond, then thought better of it. He turned and walked away, his footsteps sharp against the floor. That evening, Keanu found Lila in the nursery. She was sitting in the soft armchair beside Theo's crib, watching him sleep. Her hands were folded in her lap, but he could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her jaw was set. I heard what happened, he said quietly. Lila did not look up. I have survived worse than a CFO with a god complex. I do not want you to survive, Keanu said. I want you to be safe. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a key card and a slip of paper with an address. This is a safe house, he said. An apartment owned by a subsidiary company. No one can trace it. I want you and Theo to stay there until this is over. Lila hesitated. I do not want to run. This is not running. This is strategy. We need you safe so you can finish what you started. Lila looked at the key card, then at Keanu. Do you really think we can win this? Keanu's expression softened. I think you have already proven that you are stronger than anyone he has ever faced. And that is exactly why he is scared. That night, Lila packed a small bag, clothes for her and Theo, her laptop, the flash drives, copies of the reports. Theo fussed when she lifted him into the carrier, but he settled the moment she held him close to her chest. The safe house was small but clean. A simple apartment with a bed, a couch, a small kitchen. Everything she and Theo needed had already been prepared. She put Theo down in the portable crib that was waiting in the corner. He was asleep within minutes, his tiny hand curled around the ear of his stuffed fox. Lila sat on the couch and opened her phone. A message from Keanu. Are you there? Yes, she typed back. Cross is verifying everything. She will call in 10 minutes. Lila waited. When the phone rang, she answered immediately. Miss Brennan. Cross's voice was crisp and professional. I have reviewed all the evidence. It is solid. I am reaching out to my contacts at the FBI tomorrow morning. If they agree to open a formal investigation, we will have a warrant within 48 hours. And if Bradley tries to run, he will not get far. We will be watching every account, every transaction. The moment he moves, we will know. Lila exhaled slowly. What do I do now? You wait, Cross said, and you stay safe. The trap is set. Now we let him walk into it. After the call ended, Lila stood by the window, looking out at the city lights below. She thought about everything that had happened. The wrong number, the unexpected kindness, the job she never thought she would have. And now this, a battle she had not chosen, but could not walk away from. She picked up her phone and typed a message to Keanu. They think people like me do not have the right to fight for what is right. They think we should know our place and stay quiet. His reply came a moment later. Then prove them wrong. Lila looked at Theo, sleeping peacefully in his crib. His chest rose and fell in a gentle rhythm. He had no idea what was happening around him. He only knew that his mother was there, that he was safe, that he was loved. She had spent her whole life fighting to survive. This time, she would fight to win. The trap was set. Cross had uploaded a fake internal memo into the Foundation's system. It was titled, Executive, Level Comprehensive Audit Review, and placed in a folder that Bradley's assistant had access to. The memo looked official. It referenced compliance evaluations, vendor contract reviews, and a timeline for executive financial transparency reports. None of it was real, but it was designed to look urgent, threatening, and impossible to ignore. Now they waited. Lila sat in the safe house, her laptop open, watching the clock on her screen. Theo was napping in the portable crib beside her, his small chest rising and falling in peaceful rhythm. Outside, the city hummed with life, completely unaware of the silent battle being waged behind closed doors. Her phone buzzed. A message from Cross. The memo was accessed 4 times in the past 3 hours. Twice from Bradley's team. Once from Derek Hansen. Once from Bradley's own login. Lila exhaled slowly. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. What does that mean? She typed back. Cross's reply came seconds later. It means he took the bait. Over the next 48 hours, Bradley Thornton made exactly the moves they had predicted. He began transferring funds out of Crescent Holdings. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. He moved money between accounts, created new shell companies, tried to bury the trail under layers of corporate paperwork. But he did not know that the FBI had already obtained a warrant. Every transaction was being monitored in real time. Every wire transfer, every account creation, every attempt to hide his tracks was logged, timestamped, and recorded. Cross sent updates throughout the day. He just moved $200,000 to an offshore account in the Caymans. Another transfer to a holding company in Delaware. He is trying to liquidate assets. He knows something is coming. Lila read each message with a mixture of relief and dread. The plan was working, but Bradley was not the kind of man who would go down quietly. And she was right. The attack came on a Tuesday morning. Lila woke to find her phone flooded with notifications. Messages, emails, social media alerts. At first, she thought something had happened to Theo. Her heart seized as she grabbed the phone and scrolled through the chaos. Then she saw the headlines. Keanu Reeves and the mystery single mother. A suspicious connection? Inside source claims charity funds used to support actor's secret companion. Who is Lila Brennan, the woman living off Hollywood's most private star? Lila felt her stomach drop. The articles were vague but vicious. They painted her as a manipulative woman who had somehow tricked her way into Keanu's life. They called her a gold digger. A fraud, a charity case who had taken advantage of a kind man's generosity. None of the stories had real evidence. None of them cited named sources. But they did not need to. The damage was done the moment the headlines went viral. Lila's personal information had been leaked. Her address, her employment history, her status as a single mother. Details that only someone with inside knowledge could have known. Bradley. She knew it was him. She could not prove it, but she knew. Her phone kept buzzing. Message after message from strangers who had found her social media accounts. Pathetic. Using a celebrity to escape your own failures. Woman, like you give single mothers a bad name. How does it feel to be a professional victim? Lila tried not to read them. But they were everywhere. In her inbox. In her notifications. In the comments on photos she had posted years ago. She sat on the floor of the safe house, her back against the wall, her knees pulled up to her chest. Theo was still sleeping. He had no idea that his mother was being torn apart by strangers who had never met her. For the first time since this all began, Lila wanted to give up. She picked up her phone and called Keanu. "I cannot do this," she said, her voice breaking. "I do not want Theo to grow up with a mother who is hated by the entire world. I do not want him to see these things when he is older and think less of me." Keanu was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke. "Lila, listen to me. What they are saying is not the truth. You know that. I know that. And soon, everyone else will know it too." "How?" she asked. "How can you possibly fix this?" "By telling the truth. Publicly?" Lila's breath caught. "You mean a press conference?" "Yes, but you hate the press. You have avoided interviews for years." "I hate injustice more," Keanu said, "and I am not going to let them destroy you for something you did not do." The press conference was held the following afternoon. Keanu Reeves, one of the most private celebrities in Hollywood, stood behind a podium in the lobby of Starlight Foundation. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. The room was packed with journalists who could not believe what they were witnessing. Keanu waited until the noise died down. Then he began to speak. "I called this press conference because there are lies being spread about someone I care about, and I am not going to let those lies stand." He paused, looking directly into the cameras. Her name is Lila Brennan. She came into my life by accident. A wrong number. A text message meant for her brother, asking for $40 to buy formula for her son. The room went silent. She did not know who I was. She did not ask for anything. She apologized for the mistake and tried to disappear. But I could hear the desperation in her words. I could feel the weight of what she was carrying, and I made a choice to help her. Keanu took a breath. The stories you have read are lies. Lila is not a gold digger. She is not a fraud. She is a single mother who was fired from her job for being pregnant, who was rejected from dozens of positions because she did not fit the image companies wanted, who struggled to feed her child while the world looked away. He gestured to a folder on the podium. What the stories did not tell you is that Lila Brennan is the reason we discovered that someone inside this foundation was stealing money. $2.3 million. Taken from a charity that helps children with cancer. Diverted through fake vendors and shell companies by our own chief financial officer, Bradley Thornton. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Lila found the pattern. She documented the evidence. She risked her safety to expose the truth. And when Bradley realized she was getting close, he tried to destroy her reputation. Keanu's voice hardened. This woman is not a criminal. She is a hero. And the real criminal is the man who has been stealing from dying children while pretending to help them. Keanu paused, letting the weight of his words settle over the room. I want to say something else, he continued. Something about how we treat people like Lila. The cameras zoomed in closer. She was fired for being pregnant. She was rejected from jobs because she was a single mother. She was looked at with suspicion because she did not have money. And when she finally got a chance, people immediately assumed she had done something wrong to get it. His voice softened but remained firm. Ugh. We live in a society that judges people by their bank accounts instead of their character. We assume that if someone is poor, they must have failed somehow, that they must be lazy or irresponsible or unworthy of our respect. He shook his head slowly. That is wrong. Being poor does not mean you are weak. It does not mean you lack value. Sometimes, the people with the least are the ones who fight the hardest because they have no other choice. Keanu looked directly into the cameras. Lila Brennan fought. And because of her courage, hundreds of children and families will continue to receive the help they desperately need. The press conference changed everything. Within hours, the narrative shifted. The same outlets that had published hit pieces against Lila were now running retractions. The same commenters who had attacked her were being drowned out by voices of support. And Bradley Thornton's name was everywhere, but not in the way he had planned. Federal investigators announced that a formal investigation had been opened. Evidence of financial fraud, money laundering, obstruction of justice. The charges were serious, and they were mounting. That night, Bradley made his final move. He packed 2 suitcases with cash, grabbed a fake passport he had kept hidden for emergencies, and drove to Los Angeles International Airport. He planned to board a flight to a country without an extradition treaty and disappear forever. He never made it past security. FBI agents were waiting for him at the gate. They had been tracking his movements since the moment the warrant was issued. He was arrested without incident, his suitcases seized, his plans shattered. The next morning, Derek Hansen was taken into custody at his home. He had tried to delete files from his computer overnight, but the evidence had already been copied and preserved. The trap had worked. 6 months later, the trial of Bradley Thornton began. It was held in a federal courthouse in downtown Los Angeles. The charges were extensive: financial fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, abuse of fiduciary duty, obstruction of justice. Bradley arrived each day in an expensive suit, his expression defiant, his lawyer at his side. He showed no remorse, no regret, only the cold certainty of a man who still believed he was smarter than everyone else. I built the financial systems of that foundation, he said during his testimony. Without me, it would be nothing. The prosecutor responded calmly. And without you, $2.3 million would have reached the children who needed it. Bradley had no answer for that. Lila was called to testify on the fourth day of the trial. She wore a simple dark suit. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun. Her hands were steady as she placed them on the witness stand. The prosecutor walked her through the evidence. The vendor codes, the shell accounts, the device IDs, the pattern she had discovered buried in months of financial records. Lila spoke clearly and professionally. She explained each document, each transaction, each discrepancy. She did not exaggerate. She did not dramatize. She simply told the truth. Then Bradley's lawyer stood up for cross-examination. He was a tall man with silver hair and a practiced smile. He looked at Lila the way so many people had looked at her before, as if she were something to be dismissed. "Miss Brennan," he said, "you are a single mother, is that correct?" "Yes." "And before you were hired at Starlight Foundation, you were unemployed?" "Yes." "In fact, you came to Mr. Reeves's attention because you sent him a text message asking for money. Is that also correct?" "I sent a message to the wrong number," Lila said evenly. "I was trying to reach my brother." The lawyer smiled. "Of course. And yet, here you are, employed by the very foundation run by the man who received that message. You would agree that is quite a coincidence." "I would call it an opportunity," Lila replied. "One that I earned." The lawyer's smile thinned. "Miss Brennan, do you honestly expect this jury to believe that a woman with no formal auditing certification, no advanced degree, and no recent work experience was able to uncover a sophisticated financial fraud that professionals missed for years?" Lila looked directly at him. "I graduated with a degree in financial accounting with a 3.8 GPA. I worked in auditing for 4 years before I was let go because I was pregnant. And yes, I am fully qualified to recognize when someone is stealing money from children who are fighting cancer." The courtroom went silent. The lawyer opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked down at his notes, shuffled some papers, and finally spoke. "No further questions." The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood and read the verdict. "On the charge of financial fraud, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of embezzlement, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of money laundering, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of abuse of fiduciary duty, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of obstruction of justice, we find the defendant guilty." Bradley Thornton sat motionless as each word was read. His face was pale. His hands gripped the edge of the table. The judge delivered the sentence 1 week later. 12 years in federal prison. No possibility of early parole. Full restitution of all stolen funds. Personal assets to be seized and returned to Starlight Foundation. Derek Hansen received 3 years of probation and was permanently banned from working in the nonprofit sector. As Bradley was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, he paused and looked back. His eyes found Lila in the gallery. There was hatred in that look, but there was something else too. Disbelief, perhaps even a trace of fear. Lila did not look away. She held his gaze until the officers guided him through the door and out of sight. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded her. "Miss Brennan, do you have anything to say to Bradley Thornton?" Lila stopped walking. She thought for a moment. "He underestimated me because I was poor," she said quietly. "He thought that meant I was weak, that I could be intimidated, that I would give up." She looked into the cameras. "That was his biggest mistake. Being poor did not make me weak. It made me stronger. Because when you have nothing to lose, you learn to fight for everything." Later that afternoon, Keanu stood on the steps of the courthouse and spoke to the gathered press. "Today is not a victory for any one person," he said. "It is a victory for every child who will receive the help they deserve. For every family fighting illness and hardship, and for everyone who has ever been judged or dismissed because of their circumstances." He paused, his voice steady. Money does not define a person's worth. Character does. And greed, no matter how clever it thinks it is, will always destroy itself in the end. 3 months after the trial, Lila stood in front of the mirror in her new apartment. It was not luxurious. It was not the kind of place that ended up in magazines. But it was warm. It had enough light. It had a separate room for Theo. And for the first time in years, it felt like home. She fastened the clasp of a thin, silver necklace around her neck. A small circle on a delicate chain. Her sister had given it to her before she passed away, years ago now. For a long time, the necklace had stayed buried in a drawer, hidden under unpaid bills and medical paperwork. Lila had forgotten it existed, but tonight felt right. From the living room, she could hear Theo babbling. He was sitting on the floor with a spoon in one hand and applesauce smeared across his chin like war paint. He was almost 2 years old now, growing faster than she could keep up with. Lila walked over and knelt beside him, wiping his face with a cloth. Theo swatted her hand away, giggling. She laughed. It was such a simple moment. Such a small thing. But it meant everything. A week after the verdict, Starlight Foundation had offered Lila a permanent position. Not just any position. Director of Internal Audit. Full autonomy. Her own team. A direct report to Keanu himself. At first, she thought they were joking. But when the offer letter arrived with her name on it, she realized they were serious. She had accepted. In the months since, Lila had rebuilt the foundation's entire financial oversight system from the ground up. Transparent processes, decentralized approvals, triple-layer verification for every transaction over $5,000. No one, not even the CEO, could bypass the system without leaving a trail. I built it, as if the smartest enemy in the world was trying to break it. She explained to her team during their first meeting. Because that is exactly what happened before. The changes at Starlight Foundation went beyond the numbers. In the year following the scandal, the organization had become a model for financial transparency in the nonprofit sector. Other charities reached out, asking to learn from their systems. Consultants requested case studies. Journalists wrote articles about how a crisis had been transformed into an opportunity for reform. And the impact showed in the work itself. In the first 12 months after Bradley's conviction, Starlight Foundation helped more than 3,000 additional families. Children who needed treatment got it. Parents who were drowning in medical debt found relief. Communities that had nowhere else to turn finally had somewhere to go. The money that Bradley had stolen was returned. Every dollar. And it went exactly where it was supposed to go. One afternoon, Lila was walking past the break room when she heard a familiar voice. She paused outside the door, just out of sight. An employee she recognized was speaking to a newer colleague. It was the same woman who had whispered about her in the hallway. During her first weeks at the foundation, the one who had called her some charity case. "You mean Miss Brennan," the woman was saying. "She is basically a legend around here. Single-handedly took down a corrupt CFO. No one knows how she figured it out. The FBI could not even see the pattern until she pointed it out." Lila stood still for a moment, listening. "Is she nice?" the new employee asked. "She is fair," the woman replied. "Tough but fair. She does not play games. She just does her job." Lila smiled quietly and kept walking. She did not need their approval. She did not need their admiration. She just needed Theo to be fed, to be safe, to be loved. Everything else was extra. Lila's relationship with Keanu was not the kind of story that tabloids dreamed about. There were no red carpet appearances. No paparazzi photos. No dramatic declarations in front of flashing cameras. What they had was quieter than that. Harder to define. But somehow more real. Keanu visited often. Sometimes he brought pizza. Sometimes he brought books. Sometimes he just sat on the floor and played with Theo while Lila finished her work. Theo had started calling him Key, his 2-year-old attempt at pronouncing Keanu. The name stuck. One evening, after Theo had fallen asleep, Lila sat on the couch scrolling through emails. Her phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Keanu. I want you and Theo to be part of my life, permanently. Not because I feel sorry for you, but because I value who you are. Lila stared at the words for a long time. Her chest felt warm in a way she had almost forgotten was possible. She typed back slowly. Ask me in person. A minute passed. Then another. Then the doorbell rang. Lila opened the door. Keanu stood in the hallway, wearing a hoodie and jeans. In one hand, he held a bag of takeout. In the other, a stuffed bear for Theo. He smiled. That small, tired, genuine smile she had come to know so well. Hi, he said. She replied. And that was enough. Later that night, after Keanu had gone home and Theo was sleeping peacefully in his crib, Lila sat alone on the couch with her laptop. Her inbox showed one unread email. It was from Keanu's internal account. No subject line. Just an attachment. She clicked on it. It was a screenshot. A picture of the very first message she had ever sent him. Marcus, sorry to bother you again. I need $40 for formula. Theo is almost out. I get paid Friday. I will pay you back, please. And below it, his reply. I think you sent this to the wrong person. Keanu had titled the file, The Accident That Was Not an Accident. Lila stared at the screen, her hand covering her mouth. Tears blurred her vision. But these were not the tears of desperation, not the tears of exhaustion or fear. These were the tears of someone who had finally reached the shore after swimming for so long she had forgotten what solid ground felt like. The annual fundraising gala for Starlight Foundation was held on a Saturday evening in late spring. It was the first gala since the scandal, and expectations were high. Donors wanted to see that the organization had recovered, that it was stronger than before, that their money would be used the way it was supposed to be used. The event exceeded every goal. By the end of the night, they had raised more money than any previous year. More than anyone had predicted. More than anyone had dared to hope. And in the middle of it all, Lila Brennan was asked to speak. She had tried to decline at first. Public speaking was not her strength. She preferred numbers, patterns, the quiet logic of spreadsheets, but Keanu had encouraged her. Your story matters, he said. People need to hear it. So she agreed. Lila stepped onto the stage, the lights bright in her eyes, her heart pounding against her ribs. The room was filled with hundreds of people. Business leaders, celebrities, philanthropists, people who controlled fortunes she could not even imagine. For a moment, she felt like the woman she used to be. The one sitting on a cold kitchen floor in the dark, wondering how she would feed her son. Then she looked down at the front row. Keanu was there, holding Theo in his lap. The little boy saw her and waved, his face breaking into a wide smile. Lila smiled back. Her heart steadied. She leaned toward the microphone and began to speak. A year ago, I was sitting on the floor of my kitchen in the dark. Her voice was quiet but clear. The electricity had been cut off. There was no food in the refrigerator. My son was crying because he was hungry, and I did not have enough money to buy a single can of formula. The room was silent. I sent a text message to my brother asking for $40. But my hands were shaking, and I typed the wrong number. That message went to a stranger, a man who could have ignored it, who probably should have ignored it. She paused. But he did not. He asked me one simple question. Is your baby going to be okay? That was it, just a question. But it was the first time in months that anyone had asked about me, about my son, without judgment, without pity, just genuine concern. Lila took a breath. I was fired from my job because I was pregnant. I was rejected from dozens of positions because I was a single mother. I was looked at with suspicion because of the clothes I wore, the apartment I lived in, the balance in my bank account. Many people in our society judge others by what they have. Money, status, connections. They assume that if you are poor, you must have failed somehow, that you must be lazy or irresponsible or unworthy of their respect. Her voice grew stronger. But I stand here today to tell you being poor does not mean you are weak. It does not mean you lack value. Sometimes, the people who have the least are the ones who fight the hardest, because they have no other choice. Lila looked out at the audience. The thing that changed my life was not the $7,500 that Keanu sent me. It was not the job. It was not the new apartment. She paused. What changed my life was trust. Someone looked at me, a struggling single mother, exhausted, nearly broken, and saw something worth believing in. That is the most valuable thing you can give another person. Not money, but the belief that they are worthy. Her eyes swept across the room. If you have the ability to help someone, even in a small way, do it. A kind word, a chance, a moment without judgment. You do not know how much it might mean to them. You do not know what edge they might be standing on. She took one final breath. And for those of you who are sitting here tonight, fighting your own battles, whether it is illness, poverty, loneliness, or despair, I want to say this: do not give up. Sometimes, the best things in life begin with a mistake. Sometimes, the person who saves you is someone you never expected to meet. And sometimes, you are stronger than you know. You just have not had the chance to prove it yet. Thank you. The room rose to its feet. The applause was thunderous. Afterward, Lila stepped down from the stage. Keanu was waiting at the bottom of the stairs. Theo was asleep on his shoulder, his small arms wrapped around Keanu's neck. Without a word, Keanu transferred the sleeping boy into Lila's arms. Theo stirred slightly, then settled against her chest with a contented sigh. They slipped out of the gala quietly, avoiding the crowds and the cameras. The night air was cool. The city stretched out before them, glittering with a million lights. Back at the apartment, Lila put Theo to bed. She stood over his crib for a long time, watching him sleep. His chest rose and fell in a gentle rhythm. His tiny hand clutched the ear of his stuffed fox, the same one that had been in those first boxes Keanu sent. She thought about the night this all began. The darkness, the cold floor, the empty formula can, the desperation that had pushed her to send that message. And she thought about where she was now. It was not perfect. Life never was. But it was good. It was hers. And she had earned every piece of it. Her phone buzzed. A message from Keanu. "You did great tonight." Lila smiled and typed back, "Thank you for not ignoring that message." His reply came a moment later. "Thank you for typing the wrong number." Before I end this story, I want to share a few personal thoughts about Keanu. What makes him different is not his wealth or his fame. It is his choices. Every day, millions of people receive messages from strangers and ignore them. Keanu chose not to. He chose to care. And that choice is rarer than any fortune. About Bradley, he was not a monster from the beginning. He was intelligent, capable, trusted. But greed blinded him. He started to believe he was above the rules, above morality, above the children whose money he was stealing. The lesson here is this: power does not corrupt people. It reveals who they truly are. And about Lila, she was not a princess waiting to be rescued. She rescued herself. Keanu opened a door, but Lila was the one who walked through it. She could have taken that $7,500 and disappeared. Instead, she chose to fight. She chose to risk everything. She chose to stand up when a powerful man threatened her. That is what a real hero looks like. This story is also about something our society often ignores: the prejudice against the poor. No one says out loud, "I look down on you because you have no money." But it hides in the eyes of a security guard who assumes you do not belong. In the jokes of coworkers who think you are beneath them. In the assumption that if you do not have wealth, you must have done something wrong. We need to look at how we judge others. This story reminds us of a few simple truths. Never judge anyone by their circumstances. The person sitting next to you on the bus might be a genius who has not been discovered yet. The job applicant in the worn-out suit might be the best employee you ever hire. A small act of kindness can change someone's entire life. It does not have to be $7,500. It could be a simple question: "Are you okay?" It could be a chance that no one else was willing to give. Poor people do not lack ability. They lack opportunity. Lila had a degree. She had experience. She had talent. All she lacked was a door that would open for her. And sometimes, the most wonderful things in life begin with an accident. A wrong number. A chance encounter. A mistake that turns out to be the best thing that ever happened to you. If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe. And remember, you too can be the person who changes someone's life, even in the smallest way. Sometimes, all it takes is choosing not to look away